Hey, greetings everyone. This is Leah Love, and if you are not yet familiar with me, I want to welcome you to my channel. I don't come on here as regularly as I would like to, but I have been thinking about being a bit more consistent. I am a conservative woman. I am also a wife. I'm a stay-at-home wife. I'm a homeschooler and a mother and a grandmother. And at this point in my journey, it's been a long journey. If you view some of my older videos, you may see the process of me just really getting myself together, pulling myself up from my bootstraps, so to speak, and really working my way through what we tend to call it is the level up process. And it's always a process. So now I'm in the next phase of my life where I'm really working on um, aligning my belief system with my current lifestyle, something that I've worked on for quite some time. And so the natural progression was going from liberal into more conservative and or moderate point of view. I'm really active on Instagram, so if you don't happen to be on YouTube as much, you can always catch me on Instagram, which is LeahLoveOnline, same as this channel. And I wanted to talk with you all about something because I spend quite a lot of time researching, watching videos, educating myself. And one of my favorite mentors is Larry Elder. And he recently came out with the Uncle Tom movie. And so I highly recommend that. That is streaming on the UncleTom.com website. It is blowing people away, and I've recommended it to quite a few people. And I was watching one of his videos this morning, and I love watching his information because he's so to the point. And he basically was saying that there is, it's hilarious, I guess we could say, or there's a problem with the way in which Black wealthy cable TV personalities are constantly pushing the Black victimization ideology and stating that because of white racism, Black people can't get rich, can't make money, can't have a successful life. When meanwhile, they are the very, epitome of being able to be successful, have income and wealth. Now, it's funny that though they have it, they promote the opposite, that it's difficult to get or damn near impossible to get.
Our cable news is chock full of rich Black people who tell non-rich Black people how racism is stopping them from becoming rich Black people. We start with Don Lemon.
And I'm always reminded of growing up in the 70s and 80s. Of course, it was a saying amongst Black people that, hey, if you're Black, you have to work twice as hard to get ahead. And that definitely might have been true in the 70s and 80s. And some people, that's not to say that some people are not having, challenges. But again, we can't spend our times talking about the exception because the norm is in 2020, it's quite different than it was even for when my mother was climbing the corporate ladder in the 80s. Totally different time, but for some reason, 40 years later, we are still stuck in this same narrative. And that's pretty much part and parcel of what is this Black struggle. And I wrote down something because as I was listening to his video, which I will link in the description box, I was thinking about the fact that between that and Joe Biden's recent blunder, I've decided to begin calling it, what did I write? Dysfunctional, homogenous, quote unquote, Black culture. And what that is that these TV stars, these individuals who have made it, NBA players who've made it, they tend to still call out this victimization, this Black, quote unquote, Black narrative, that they're being hunted down in the streets, that there's just so much racism. And he, Larry Elder goes into the fact that, here's Don Lemon. I believe he's worth about $10 million. He's got a home in Sag Harbor, which is a historic Black area in Martha's Vineyard area. And so he's bought a home there for $3.1 million. He's got another condo in New York City somewhere, or an apartment. And clearly he is not dealing with day-to-day racism. Clearly he is not, living in a situation where the color of his skin has stopped him from reaching the top in, a network, a news network. And yet he's peddling this. He's constantly talking about the Black victimization and racism and how horrible it is. And it's got a really negative effect because it's continuating this dysfunctional, homogenous or homogenization of quote unquote Black culture when there's such a huge disconnect, because clearly he's made it, and clearly many other Black people have made it in many different fields. But when we speak in public, we meaning quote unquote Black, that we've got to start talking about the 1960s. We've got to start talking about the 1970s, or we have to constantly align ourselves with the Black underclass. And a lot of people get in their feelings when I begin talking about the Black underclass. But once I really learned and wrapped my mind around that, and had to begin to understand that we are not, meaning quote unquote Black people or Black Americans, are not a homogenous group of people. We do not have to follow the victimization and identity politics just because. We don't have to keep passing on this narrative to our children just because. Are there racist individuals in the world, in America? Yes, there are, but that is not stopping us in the way that it stopped us in the 1950s and 1960s. And so there are two reasons that I want to talk about in regards to why is it that the Black wealthy people who have a public platform tend to always push the narrative of woe is me, I'm a victim of racism, we can't get ahead. Why do they push that rather than what they actually did to get ahead? Because they could not have gotten ahead if they had the mentality of a victim. They had to work hard. They had to study. They had to study their art, craft, whatever they're good at. They had to put in long hours. They had to strategize. They had to use all of the skills that any other human being would use in order to excel. And rather than talking about that constantly like a broken record and really influence the young children who are following them, they come out and pull out this long story about how racism exists. LeBron, everybody's been talking about victimization and racism and how they can't walk in the streets without being lynched every day. And it's really unfortunate because they are, influencing a younger generation when they spend much less time influencing them in terms of creating the skills and sticking to it that got them where they are. And I just think that it does just such a disservice to young Black youths who look up to entertainers as the only thing that they're supposed to be. You either got to be in sports or you got to be a musician or a quote unquote rapper if you are going to have any success in life. And we don't see them pushing the sciences, health, math. We don't see Black people pushing that. It's only these entertainers who are out here. And there are two reasons. The first one, why do these entertainers and or public figures constantly push racism? And one of them is, for me, is that, again, they're still infected with this victimization or this victimology or this identity politics. And I want to be quite honest. I notice now when I study so many of the other aspects of identity politics, like for instance, radical feminists, their whole identity politics, gay, their whole identity politics. Now everybody's got to hear about transgenders' identity politics. And it's interesting that, people, when they have something to work for, when they have something to gripe about, when they have something to share with the world as, hey, I'm a wounded person, everybody's done me wrong, help me, come listen to my story, come talk to me. I'm not saying that one should shame others. I'm not saying that one should hush people up when they have an issue that they want to share. But my whole thing is that right now the environment in our country is all about identity politics. It's all about leading with, some terrible thing that's been done to you. And therefore, I need to get your sympathy. I need to get your attention. I need to be patted on my back. I need to be petted. And if I can do that, then I can get special privileges. I can get a special program. I can get special recognition in my classroom. It's like a name tag. And we have seemed to have sewn this into pop culture right now, that if you don't have something to complain about, if you don't have something to, let other people feel sorry for you about, then, you have nothing. It's not as if we're living in a world where people, or in a country where every single person is just struggling to eat. Because we have not had a war in quite some time, it's a prosperous time. It's a time where there aren't a whole bunch of problems. And a lot of times, people don't feel like they have meaning in their life if they don't have a problem, if they don't have some sort of badge of shame, or some victimization tool to use against others in order to make others treat you better, because somehow you feel as if who you are as a person, is not adequate enough to gain and garner attention and support and respect. And so, other words, now you've got to lead with what's everyone else has done to you, so that people can stop and pet you and make you feel better. And that's one of the reasons why I call it a virus. I call victimization a virus, because once it filters into your system and you learn to lead with that, you are in effect saying that I'm going to do this little thing over here. Or I'm going to try for this graduate or this degree. I'm going to try for that. But if I don't win, if I fail, it was because of because I'm Black. And so a lot of times the adverse effect of this is that you have a whole swath of Black youth that don't really try as hard as they could, because one, they feel like they've been educated into this idea that they're not going to do well, they're not going to have a break, that even if they do well, people are going to ruin it for them, or if they walk out in the street, despite statistics, they're going to be shot and killed. And so a lot of Black children, have a very different experience in their life and in their upbringing, because they're already living in a state of fear. They're already wearing the victim badge of, oh, I'm Black, so I can't get ahead. And that begins to do something to your insides, to your personality. And even if you are a person who maybe grew up middle to upper class and you happen to be Black, it's funny how even if you've not had the circumstances of someone in an inner city, you're still identifying with that, because that story is somehow still being passed down from parent to child. Or pop culture is very keen to make sure that this story is passed down because it suits the liberal narrative. Liberals don't have anyone to save if they don't create victims. And so whether you learn it at home or you learn it in pop culture, you learn that, hey, feel sorry for me, respect me even better, because I made it despite all of these horrible lynchings and dragging Black men in the street by their feet, and slave catchers. It's 2020, but there's still slave catchers out here supposedly. So if you have this whole thing, and look, I made it despite all of that, it's a it's a virus, it's a sickness as far as I'm concerned, and it's really harming us. Now I want to get into number two, which is related to a narcissistic turning around of this idea of the Black card. And so it's the Black guilt versus the Black card, and I want to get into that, but that's a bit more touchy. And I have found that I would rather be in a community, inside of a community where people are really ready to hear, where they're really invested in waking themselves up. And so that's why I created my Patreon, because this is the place where we get into the nitty gritty of what we've been indoctrinated with and how we are moving ourselves out of that into a healthier state of mind, a healthier lifestyle, a healthier mindset. In order to do that, we have to work through a lot of the dysfunctions that we have, inherited, I would even say or argue via epigenetics. We're working through a lot of family culture, family myth, as well as the larger society, which supports this whole victimization, this whole racism narrative that is still being carried on as if it is 1940s. So I'm going to do that in my Patreon account, which is The Bus Transfer. I'm going to talk about point number two. And let's keep discussing, you guys. I'm enjoying the conversations, particularly on my Instagram account, where people are really, leaning into the transition that people are going through in regards to away from the destructive liberal politics and more into a healthier mindset, which generally speaking is a conservative mindset, particularly since we all know that for the most part, throughout history, Black people are phenomenally conservative. We've been led astray into a whole bunch of nonsense and liberalism, which has been destructive for us. More so, the liberal politicians and leaders are doing quite well. They're quite wealthy. They're living a good life, but they keep promoting these disastrous and dysfunctional ideologies to their Black constituents to keep them in a state of mind where they need to depend on their massa, which is Biden or Hillary Clinton. And so I'm going to talk about that more in my Patreon. So you definitely are more than welcome to follow me over there and subscribe to that channel so that we can get into more of the nitty gritty where people aren't constantly in their feelings and being contrarians and gaslighting. That's not the space for it. So I will see you over there. And thank you. If you like this content, if you want to hear more or review some of my older videos, definitely feel free to subscribe. I welcome you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.